Hey guys, we are going to watch China challenge US ship. And why did they do that? Because that's a very stupid thing to do. But China did challenge them, and we are seeing that there is only one country that can properly challenge USA, and that is China, because of their production quality
Yeah.
and production quantity. So now we will see why did they challenge US Navy ship and what happened after that. So let's watch the
At 0923 hours on June 14th, 2025, the USS Princeton was conducting another routine freedom of navigation patrol in the South China Sea when her
Near
spy
India.
radar painted something that would nearly start World War III.
What?
A Chinese type O-52D destroyer that had been loitering at 200 kilometers just as she suddenly accelerated from 18 to 30 knots in under 90 seconds. Unknown to the Americans, the
That's very
Zhangshang's
quick.
captain had just received orders from Beijing. Intercept the Americans and make them blink first. But Beijing was about to learn why challenging the U.S.
Never do
Navy
that.
in open
Never.
water
Big
remains a
mistake.
spectacularly stupid idea.
Very
the
stupid.
Nimitz Carrier Strike Group, you see here, had been doing what American sailors have done best for 75 years, keeping the world's most important sea lanes open so Chinese factories could sell their cheap electronics to Best Buy.
Oh,
wow.
80 nautical miles from the nearest Chinese territory in international waters, where $3.4 trillion in annual trade flows
Wow.
like clockwork.
Of course, China is the
Striker's
biggest
mission
trader.
Was textbook freedom of navigation, predictable course, transparent intentions, and the kind of professional conduct that separates real navies from floating militia. At 0926, the target classification was complete. The radar operators had positively identified a Type O-52D destroyer of the Chinese Navy with a threat assessment of moderate to high.
Moderate to high.
Inside the Princeton's
that
Combat
a
Information
speed?
Center,
No,
the
threat
tactical
assessment,
action
like,
officer
it's
watched
dangerous.
the Chinese destroyer's
okay.
vector with the calm that comes from having 122 vertical launch cells loaded with enough firepower to
Whoa.
turn any Chinese ship into fish food. The spy radar,
Fish
the world's
food.
most advanced naval sensor,
Fish will not
made the
eat that.
picture so clear you could point out every detail of the enemy ship. At the Chinese destroyer's current speed, he'd reach weapons engagement range in exactly 17 minutes.
Oh.
The map was simple but
Just stop.
terrifying for the Chinese.
Go back.
Her YJ-18 anti-ship missiles could cover the remaining distance in under 4 minutes once launched, but the Princeton's SM-6s in surface mode could reach about 240 nautical miles.
They
and
both
swing
have
like
some dangerous
flies.
missiles.
Yeah.
At 0929, the captain wanted to know the probable intent of the Chinese ship. The answer was obvious. At current speed and heading, she'd be within weapons release range in 14 minutes. The recommendation was to go to general quarters, but the captain's response was pure American confidence.
Let's
see how
go.
badly they want
Yeah.
to embarrass themselves first.
Embarrass
That's even if
themselves.
they could get there safely. The South China Sea was packed with merchant traffic. 46 commercial vessels within 50 miles, all
Oh.
depending on the U.S.
Any
Navy's
fight
presence
will
to
hurt
guarantee
everybody.
safe passage. A Singapore-flagged container ship loaded with semiconductors. A South Korean LNG
what's
tanker
that?
worth $200 million.
LNG
All
tanker.
would be at risk if Beijing succeeded in turning
Gas.
international waters into its personal swimming pool. But that would require them to actually win a fight against the U.S. Navy.
Not possible.
Which hasn't happened since never.
Never, yes.
At 0930, the Princeton's cooperative engagement capability automatically shared the threat data across every ship in the strike group. The Nimitz herself, 104,600 tons of floating American diplomacy, carrying 90 of the world's most advanced aircraft,
Yeah.
adjusted her flight operations with the precision of a Swiss watch. The destroyers, Changhoon and Kidd, shifted positions to take station around the carrier that would turn any Chinese attack into a one-way trip to the bottom. At 0935, the tactical
this is
picture
happening
went
within
from
just 10
concerning
minutes.
to dangerous.
Yeah.
The E-2D Hawkeye orbiting at 25,000 feet, providing
Hawkeye.
a god's eye view of everything within 400 miles, detected multiple aircraft launching from the Chinese carrier.
Oh, they are
They're
launching
launching.
The
aircraft.
radar
Oh my
signatures
God.
were consistent with those of J-15 fighters, climbing hard and
J-15.
heading south, as if they actually stood a chance.
Why are they
the air
doing this?
controllers immediately noticed
Stupid.
something hilarious. The J-15s were struggling to gain altitude, likely due to fuel limitations from the ski jump launch system the Chinese were so proud of. A minute later, the sonar operators added the final piece of China's coordination puzzle. they detected a possible submerged contact 80 nautical miles
Oh,
away.
there is also
An
a
acoustic
submarine.
signature consistent with a Type
Are they trying
439
to trap
diesel-electric
USA?
submarine. The funny
Yeah,
part,
looks like.
the thing was making noise like a freight train. Any competent submarine crew would have been mortified. The Chinese weren't just being aggressive. They were orchestrating a multi-domain intimidation campaign with equipment that belonged in a museum. Surface ships from the 1990s,
So old.
carrier aircraft that couldn't carry a full weapons load, and submarines so loud they might as well be broadcasting their position on AM radio. It was textbook
loud.
radio, the kind that
Oh, they're
only works if
roasting
your
them.
target is
Oh
too
my
weak
God.
or too scared to fight back.
Don't roast China.
Unfortunately for Beijing, they just challenged the wrong Navy in the wrong ocean. The U.S. Navy had been perfecting blue water
Wrong ocean?
dominance since 1942.
The name of the ocean is South
and
China
these
Sea.
Chinese forces
Yeah.
were about to receive a free lesson in why the American Navy reigned supreme. By 0937, the USS Nimitz flight deck erupted into
Even they've
controlled
also
chaos
launched.
that only American carriers have truly mastered. FA-18E Super Hornets
Oh
from
my God.
BFA-14 Top Hatters rocketed off the catapults at 45-second intervals. A ballet of precision that Chinese carriers, dependent on inefficient ski jumps, could only dream of matching. Steam billowed from the catapult tracks as American naval aviation did what it does best: project
Attack.
power.
Project power.
The first
I'm
division
strong.
of Super Hornets climbed through 15,000 feet. Their AN APG-79 ASA radars already painting the incoming J-15s at maximum range. The technological mismatch was almost unfair.
Unfair.
The APG-79's 1,100 transmit-receive modules could track dozens of targets simultaneously, while the J-15's mechanically scanned radar swept back and forth like a lighthouse, broadcasting its position
They
to
were like
anyone
kids
listening.
in front
Yeah.
of
The
them.
J-15s were struggling for altitude, a painful reminder of the Shandong ski jump limitations. Without catapults, they launched with reduced fuel and weapons loads. They were climbing hard to gain an energy advantage, but burning fuel at a faster rate. Meanwhile, the
Yeah.
American fighters, launched at full combat weight, had fuel to spare and carried hands rated E for everyone.
Oh wow.
However, the weapon and
The
fuel
weapons were
loadout
rated
was
E for
just
everyone.
the advantage the Chinese could physically see. Every F-18 was connected via Link 16, sharing sensor data in real time. When one aircraft saw something, they all saw it.
Oh.
Chinese pilots, meanwhile, relied on voice commands and individual sensors, like
That is
fighting
too
a
old.
network team while blindfolded. The
Whoa.
technological gap wasn't measured in years, but
Yeah.
decades. The E-18G Growlers entered the fight without firing a shot. These electronic warfare variants carried
Who's going to
ALQ-99
attack first?
jamming pods that could fry enemy electronics
Winner-
from
I know the
100
winner.
miles away.
Yes, for
As they
sure.
established their jamming orbits, Chinese communications began to fragment. On Chinese radar screens, ghost contacts multiplied. American fighters
Oh.
appeared and disappeared.
But China
multiplied
might have a
and
plan.
merged. What looked like 4 F-18s became 12, then
Ooh.
20.
Whoa.
Radar locks broke and reformed constantly. The J-15 pilots found themselves fighting phantoms while real threats maneuvered unseen. The Americans executed a tactical spread called the Wall,
The
a
Wall.
defensive formation perfected over decades. A high cap
They can't
at
break.
35,000 feet, medium at 25,000, and low at 15,000. Multiple overlapping engagement zones, mutual support, and nowhere for the Chinese to go without entering someone's weapons envelope. The Americans had the Chinese in a vice 3 times over. The Chinese formation, by contrast, remained bunched, a necessity when your data links can't support
100% they had to stay
distributed
together.
operations. They had to maintain visual contact to coordinate, making them predictable and vulnerable. Their J-15s might look impressive on propaganda posters, but in actual combat, they were flying antiques against networked
Antiques?
first-century warfare.
Oh my
At
god.
You know, even
11:45,
Pakistan
has
this
RC-135B
Yeah.
rivet
J-15s.
joint
Oh.
provided
They're
crucial
calling
they're
them
using
intelligence.
that.
antiques.
This ungainly
Oh my
Boeing
God.
707 derivative had been boring holes in the sky for 6 hours. Its electronic intelligence equipment cataloging every Chinese emission. The Mandarin linguists aboard were having a field day. Dark Star confirms Chinese pilots requesting permission for aggressive maneuvers. Repeat, they're asking for clearance to buzz our ships. The Chinese were escalating, but asking permission first. American pilots, trained to seize initiative, found this pretty funny. By the time Beijing approved anything, the tactical situation would have changed 3 times over.
Oh.
Meanwhile, the Princeton's defense systems tracked every threat with mechanical precision. Her spy radar, capable of tracking objects the size of a baseball at over 165 miles,
Wow.
made the Chinese destroyer look like a barn door. Fire control solutions were
Barn
updated
door?
continuously, and soon it seemed like
Hey,
they
you
might
just kick it.
actually come in handy. At 09:47 hours, the Zhanjiang crossed a line that would have triggered immediate retaliation from any other navy. Her Type 346A phased array radar stopped searching and locked on to the USS Nimitz with fire control
Are they
quality
still
tracking.
stupid?
In naval
Oh my
warfare,
God, why
this
they're
is
not
one breath away
stopping?
from launching missiles, the electromagnetic equivalent of pointing a loaded gun at
Yeah,
someone.
why are you doing this?
Inside Princeton CIC, the response was immediate but measured American discipline. Drilled through countless exercises, held firm.
Contact
The
them.
Chinese were betting American restraint against their aggression. They were about to learn that restraint didn't mean inability. The Princeton's own fire control radars remained in standby. Her 122 vertical launch cells contained enough firepower to send the Zhanjiang to the bottom in
Whoa.
seconds. SM-6 missiles that could reach out 240 kilometers, and SM-2s in surface mode, all ready to turn the ship into the area's newest artificial reef. Every firing solution is continuously updated. The Chinese destroyer was at risk from multiple systems, from multiple angles,
Just
with
get
zero chance
out.
of survival
Yeah.
if this situation escalated. The fire control lock persisted for exactly 30 seconds, long enough to claim they could have attacked, not long enough to trigger American self-defense measures. It was choreographed aggression, but against
I am
the
feeling
wrong
the pressure
opponent,
that
the Princeton's
Chinese should have
crew
felt.
documented
Yeah.
everything.
They should
Timestamps,
step back
signal
now.
characteristics,
It's high
and
time.
bearing data. Information that would be quite useful in a real shooting war. But despite the Chinese ship stopping its illumination, things were far from over.
Oh.
In the air, a J-15 pilot decided to demonstrate his own recklessness.
Stupid.
Breaking
What?
formation, he dove toward an F-18 with what fighter pilots call a thump. An
Thump.
aggressive close pass meant to intimidate.
Oh,
the
like-
American pilot, trained at Top Gun, where such maneuvers are eaten for breakfast, simply rolled inverted and pulled into the Chinese fighter's 6 o'clock
Oh, he's
position.
back of him.
Oh.
For 3 seconds, the American had a perfect firing solution. His
Yeah.
helmet-mounted display showed the Chinese fighter's engines glowing hot in infrared.
What did
Oh,
they
he
do?
could have just
Squeeze
pressed
of
the button
trigger
and
Yeah,
boom.
they're
an
gone.
A9X Sidewinder straight up the J-15's tailpipe. He didn't squeeze.
He didn't.
Professional discipline.
Very
held.
professional.
The moment passed. But the Chinese still had one trick up their sleeve. The Chinese escalation reached its peak when the submarine made its move. The Type 039 diesel-electric boat had been creeping closer, using the layer depth to mask its approach. At 0951, it made a critical error, raising its snorkel to recharge batteries.
Oh, now
Tail,
easily
sonar,
visible.
Subsurface contact, bearing 159, range 15,000 yards. Contact is snorkeling. Classified as probable Type 039. He's making noise like a freight train.
They knew
The
everything
submarine
about it.
captain
Yeah.
either didn't know or didn't care that the Princeton's SQQ-89 sonar suite had been tracking him for the past hour. The ship had its acoustic signature catalog, its position
Acoustic
fixed within
signature catalog.
meters. If this went kinetic, he'd have about 12 seconds to contemplate his life choices before
Oh,
an
only
Azrock
12
turned his
seconds.
boat into fish food. The tactical
Everything is
picture
fish
had
food.
become a textbook study on how not to conduct naval operations. Chinese forces had positioned themselves in a box, carrier to the northwest, a destroyer to the west, and a submarine to the
Oh,
southwest.
they are trying to keep a
If
trap.
shooting started, none of them would survive the first 5 minutes. And the Americans were about to show them exactly how that would go down. At 14:30 hours, the USS Nimitz launched everything that could fly. 48 aircraft roared off her deck in the
And I think so
largest
the
single-carrier
the Chinese
display of
still
air
feel
power
that they
in
have
years.
trapped USA.
Super Hornets
Yeah.
loaded with live weapons.
They don't understand they are
EA-18
on the
They're
losing
losing
side.
side,
Yeah.
yes.
carrying electronic warfare packages that could black out a city. E-2D Hawkeyes commanding the electric high ground. The afternoon sky turned dark with American aircraft. The Growlers went to work first. Their ALQ-99 pods operating at full power turned Chinese radar screens into modern art.
Ooh.
False contacts appeared by the hundreds. Real aircraft vanished into electronic noise. The Shandong's air defense picture looked like someone had thrown paint at the screens. Chinese controllers couldn't distinguish real threats from ghosts. Everything was a threat. Then came the submarine. A Virginia-class attack submarine that had been shadowing the Chinese formation for 8 days. Silent, invisible, patient. At 1547,
US had their own submarine.
6 nautical miles from
Wow.
the Shandong, close enough for
That was
Chinese lookouts
unexpected.
to see
Actually.
her black hole with their Mark I eyeballs.
Oh wow.
The psychological impact was devastating. 8
This might be
days
a
of
big surprise
undetected
for them.
operations. Their entire anti-submarine screen, helicopters, sono buoys, and hull-mounted sonar had failed
Sonar
to detect
buoys.
the 7,900-ton American submarine.
All of that went to
If this had
waste.
been war, their carrier would already be toast. The sub's commanding officer ordered an emergency surface purely for effect. The submarine burst from the water like a breaching whale, water cascading off her hull in the afternoon sun. Photographers on the Chinese ships would have perfect shots of American dominance. After about 90
They will
seconds,
take photos
enough time to be
of American
seen,
dominance.
photographed, and reported, she slid back beneath the waves. The message was
Oh.
clear. We
That
own
looks
the undersea
scary.
Very
domain.
scary.
Back in the air, American fighters demonstrated ACM, air combat maneuvering, at the expense of increasingly desperate Chinese fighters. The J-15s, already low on fuel from their ski jump launches and hard climb to altitude, found themselves unable to match the Americans turn for turn. Each engagement ended the same way. American fighters in firing position, Chinese fighters defensive and burning precious fuel. One by one, the Chinese fighters peeled off, heading back
Just
to the
go
Shandong
back.
with near-empty tanks. Their combat endurance had been exhausted in fruitless attempts to match American capabilities. They landed with emergency fuel. Some probably saw the bingo light they'd only seen in simulators before.
Oh.
By 1623, the Shandong's carrier strike group began its withdrawal. Official
Oh.
Chinese communications spoke of completing scheduled exercises. But everyone knew the truth. They'd come to demonstrate
It's not a
Chinese
scheduled
naval
exercise,
power,
yes.
to
Yeah.
intimidate lawful navigation, to claim waters that didn't belong to them.
Yeah.
Instead, they'd received a lesson in why the South China Sea is America's 6th Great Lake.
Yeah.
Bye for now.
Chinese made some very big mistake going out there because South China Sea is a very very contested place. All the other nations like Philippines, Vietnam, and all the other nations like have a place. They say that we have South China Sea, but China is like no, all that is mine, and that cannot happen. And US makes sure that that does not happen, but China just wants to mingle with them.
That was a crazy step. Like, why would you? Don't you know the air dominance, the power of USA? I don't know why they just do it. And this question comes in my mind often, that what if happens that the fight is going on between China and USA, because we know that both countries are so powerful, but we know who's going to win it.
Yeah. So what do you guys think about it? Do let us know in the comment section below. So do like, share, and
Subscribe.
bye.